Hello, everyone. It's me, Brandon Coprich, and welcome back to Chapter 6 of The Stranger by Caroline Cooney in our COVID-19 Reading Corner. We last saw Nicoletta ditch Christo, who had just asked her out, and not see Jethro in class, so she went looking for him. And at the end of a lane, across a lake, an icy field with two lakes on each side, she found herself in a cave hidden in a cliff, and she felt like she was falling, but a monster, a creature from the depths of hell lifted her and raised her out of the cave and said, "Don't ever come back." And Nicoletta felt she had a bond with this creature. So things are getting pretty weird. Things are going all over the place very quickly. There's only one thing to do now, and it's to find out what happens next. This is Chapter 6. A strange and difficult promise. Don't even think about it. A promise not to go back would be easy to keep. Neither wild horses nor nuclear bombs could have made Nicoletta go back. But not even think about it? Not wonder who or what it was? What sort of life it led? Not wonder about its name or gender or species? It had saved her life. Who could forget such an event? A strange evening followed that weird and inexplicable afternoon. She walked through the house which had only that morning she hated. But how wonderful it was, for it had walls and warmth and lamps and pillows. It had love and parents and food and music. Her sister did not infuriate her. Jamie actually seemed beautiful and even worthy. She was alive and giggling and pesky, which was how little sisters are meant to be. What did Jamie have to do with caves and monsters? Nicoletta had always told her family everything. Other girls who said they could not communicate with their families confused Nicoletta. What could they mean? Nicoletta simply arrived home from school and started talking. So did Jamie. So did Mother and Dad. Not communicate. For the first time in her life, she did not communicate. She did not tell them about the quiet lane, the staring stone, the straight path, the descending cave. As for the creature who brought her up from the depths, by the time she had reached home, she could no longer believe it herself. He could have been nothing but a hallucination. She had not known her imagination was so active, in fact. Nicoletta thought of herself as having little or no imagination. Such a thing could have not happened, and therefore it had not happened. And so she remained silent and shared none of it. And it swelled in her mind, filling her with confusion and disbelief. Several times she drew a deep breath to begin the story somewhere. Each time she looked away and said nothing. She did not want a lecture on safety. Safety alone could consume weeks of scolding. Just the idea of Nicoletta walking alone in an unknown woods would outrage her parents. But when she told them she walked straight into an abandoned mine shaft, well, please. But what kind of mine could it have been? Who had mined it? Who had smoothed the lovely walls, and what mineral caused that elegant glow? A monster lives in it. She imagined herself saying to her father, "The monster has a cave skin, sand skin, rock skin. It has calcified leaves for hair and crumbling stones for fingers." It occurred to Nicoletta that her family might just laugh. She did not want anybody laughing at the creature. It had saved her. It had carried her out. And yet she wanted to talk about it. She was a talker and a sharer by nature. And more than anything, she wanted to go back. On that very first evening, sitting quietly at the dining table, While Jamie did geography homework and Nicoletta pretended to do algebra, her mother balanced the checkbook and her father finished the newspaper. Nicoletta thought, I want to go back. Jethro was familiar with the path. Surely he had followed it to its end at least once. Jethro would not have flinched from entering that shining cave. He would have walked in as she had. That's why Jethro didn't want me to follow him any further, she thought. He's met the monster too. The monster asked Jethro never to tell her. In school tomorrow, she would ask him about it. She would see if his eyes flickered when she said, cave. It would not be breaking a promise if you talked with a person who already knew. When the phone rang and it was Christo, Nicoletta could hardly remember who that was. She could barely remember madrigals, her group of friends, and her great loss. Christo wanted to know what color dress she would wear. Nicoletta actually said, Wear to what? Christo laughed uneasy. The dance Friday, Nicoletta. She detested rudeness in people. She was ashamed of herself for not having her thoughts where they belong. Quickly she said, I was kidding. I'm sorry, it was dumb. I have this lovely pink pale dress. Are you getting me flowers? I adore flowers. Nobody had ever given her flowers. Why was she implying that she had that honor often? Christo said his mother was recommending white. Roses are carnations. Nicoletta said she would love white roses, but before her eyes was the blackness of caves. And inside her mind was slipperiness. She had a secret now, she who had never had a secret. The secret wanted to be in front of her mind, consuming her thoughts. She had to push it to the rear and behave like a normal human being and flirt with Christo and miss madrigals and study algebra. Let's have lunch again tomorrow, Christo said. She hesitated. What about Jethro? Well, she would talk to Jethro in art appreciation or follow him again. Yes, she said. Lunch was fun today. She couldn't even remember lunch today. And lunch the next day blurred as well. She had difficulty paying attention to Christo. Everything she did was fake. And she was sufficiently aware to know that and be appalled at herself. She knew that Christo half knew. She knew he was thinking that perhaps this was what other girls were like. That easy friendship evaporated to be replaced by hot and cold flirtation. And she knew that while he was hurt by her distance, he was also fascinated by it. He had never experienced that with a girl. All the girls adored him. Christo was thinking more about Nicoletta than he had ever thought about a girl. And am I flattered? Thought Nicoletta. Am I falling in love with him? Am I even thinking about my first formal dance and my first bouquet? No. I'm thinking about a boy in art whose last name I don't even know. I'm thinking about a cave in which I thought I might die and a monster in whom I no longer believe because there's no such thing as a monster. Lunch ended, and she rushed to art appreciation, barely taking time to wave goodbye to Christo. He would have kissed you, whispered Rachel as the other girls rushed up the stairwells together. He wanted to kiss you in front of everybody. I could tell. I know these things. 2 days ago, Nicoletta had thought that the loss of her magical friends would kill her. Now she wanted Rachel to vanish so she could concentrate on Jethro. And because passing period was only 3 minutes, Rachel had no choice but to vanish. And Nicoletta entered art appreciation. Jethro was present. She was filled with exuberance. It was like turning into a hot air balloon. Flames of delight lifted her heart and soul. "Jethro," she said. His body stiffened in its seat, and he did not turn. She knelt beside his chair and looked up into his face. He remained frozen. How perfect he was. Like a statue, sculpture from some dark age. She wanted to stroke his face and hair as if he were artwork himself, and she could study the curves and surfaces. He relented and looked down at her. "I'm sorry about that lunch," she said, keeping her voice soft so nobody could share their words. "But I have to talk to you. Something happened yesterday, Jethro. I have to tell you about it." She stared into his eyes, looking for a clue to his thoughts. Jethro wet his lips again as if she were frightening him. "After school, let's walk down the lane together." He was shocked. She might have suggested that they bomb a building. "Just a walk," she whispered. "Just a talk, please." He shivered very slightly. She could not imagine what his thoughts were. His eyes gave her no more clues than a sculpture would give, and he used no words. The teacher cleared his throat. Nicoletta, excuse me." She got to her feet, and in the moment before she slid into her seat, she stroked the back of Jethro's hand. He spent the whole entire class period looking at his hand, as if nobody had ever touched him before. And that is the end of chapter 6. My friends, the story, man, this boy, Jethro, is consuming all of Nicoletta's thoughts. She's becoming enraptured in the darkness of the cave. It seems like the perfect life that she thought she knew is being turned upside down. And now she and Jethro will go for a talk, perhaps in the next chapter, and he'll tell her everything that he knows. So if you want to find out what Jethro knows, be sure to come back for chapter 7. Until then, good night and much love.